haven't seen the previous video in this series, follow the link on your screen or click the link in the description or pinned comment below.
Flying this close to the water just because it looks cool in a movie. Unless you're a fake prince trying to impress a princess by fingering aquatic surface tension, there is no need for this behavior.
Jeremy, this plane is on approach for a landing. I have my own footage of being pretty close to water landing in Japan, and you want to know why that is? Because Japan is a series of islands.
Just calling everyone Roger because you're bad at remembering names. I'm almost certain that both of these guys aren't named Roger.
It's starting early, folks. As I explained in my last video, the jokes fly a mile a minute when CinemaSins encounters an actually good movie, and they can't find anything to sin. Contrary to popular belief, I don't really go after CinemaSins for their jokes, unless they're egregiously bad, in which case... My only issue with this is things like this make the video much longer than it needs to be. When CinemaSins first started, we came to them because they would show us things we all missed. The videos were short, snappy, and while there were jokes, they got in and out in 4 minutes or less. Now we have to hear Jeremy tell silly jokes that nobody laughed at and don't make any sense. I mean, Ryokai doesn't translate into the name or phrase Roger, for one. That's just the English equivalent in a translation. And you're probably starting to think, Birdman, you're taking this too seriously. Well, guess what? I am.
Also, I'll just get this out of the way here. I don't know Japanese. The English subtitles are my reality. I'm sure there's some nuance that the original Japanese language adds, but nuance? It's a stupid French word that should be pronounced nuance anyway. And I'm not open to other opinions, and everyone who disagrees with me is stupid.
I get it, and I understand where you're coming from. You're making fun of the English translations. I guess my problem is, why did you give the film an extra sin because you wanted to explain the previous joke? That's not Japanese's fault.
Taki! Taki!
Don't you put those lights on me! Do you know how much well-lit CG costs? Do you think we're made of money?
God Jeremy yells at the Japanese cliche.
Godzilla ってやつじゃ。なんだそれ。島のやつがそう言ってたんだ。今日みたいに深海魚が降りた日は。
Another distinguishing factor is its tendency to wait for expositional conversations like this to finish before continuing its rampage.
Is it similar to the tendency of you not understanding things happening at the same time?
It's time for some corpse math. Here we see 9 decently intact corpses, with another one being dragged this direction for a total of 10. But considering the most possible men we saw in this battle was 12, and 2 of them survived, are we supposed to believe that he retrieved every single body in such good condition? This lineup includes the 3 who were tail-jellied, the one who was stomped full force, the guy that was yeeted at least a mile away. I call corpse-nanigans.
You'd be surprised at the human body's ability to stay intact even after being crushed or dropped from a tall height. I guess what I'm saying is, what the hell is corpse-nanigans?
死んでんだぞ！おい、お前が撃たなかったからだ！
False cause fallacies.
From our perspective, sure, you're not exactly wrong. We have the benefit of knowing Godzilla, even in this smaller form, is relatively indestructible. But these are people encountering an unknown animal for the first time. They have no way to know their weapons won't work, and because one of them choked and failed to use their best weapon, it's easy to point the finger at him. Besides, the guy is reacting emotionally to an incredible situation that just saw his mates die. This is an entirely reasonable reaction.
False cause fallacies. Yes, I know we just sin this. And yes, I know the movie is making a point here, but you begged for us to sin this piece of perfection, so it's your fault.
Who the heck is asking for these videos again? Well, here's a sin for them. But I think you've misunderstood this scene here. This is Imperial Japan after having surrendered to America. The people believed the emperor was divine and thought that kamikaze was an honor. They believed that this tactic would turn the war around and was their last hope. That there is a kamikaze pilot still alive right in front of them after having lost the war. I mean, do I really need to explain further?
Begging for splinters by not wearing gloves while clearing wood.
Well, typically Japanese women don't get splinters from... Oh, you meant that type of wood.
These pursuers are close enough to see this baby handoff, but not smart enough to know to circle back to the baby when they can't find the mother.
All right, now, let's use our heads, please. If this mother was so callous as to dump her own baby off on a stranger to get away from a mob, why would that mob assume she'd return for the baby? From their perspective, she's a piece of shit that put her own life before her child's.
Oh, good. My favorite part of Godzilla films are all the shots of babies doing the darndest things.
I'd like to point out that this isn't an American-made Godzilla film. I know that sounds intuitive, but I don't think Jeremy knows that. You see, American-made Godzilla films are all about the action, and the human element is some tacked-on bull jive that nobody likes. This is the perspective Jeremy is coming from, where he assumes the human drama is the sideshow and Godzilla is the main event. The truth is that the original Japanese Godzilla properties are about the humans, and Godzilla represents America and its use of nuclear weapons against them. Get it? Atomic breath? Japanese Godzilla films are about them pulling themselves out of a hopeless situation post-war and becoming the economic powerhouse they are today. It's a metaphor, see? And this is why the human element in American-made Godzilla films is so weak. Godzilla isn't a metaphor, but a movie monster that just does cool shit. Americans like empty calories is what I'm saying.
私に夫がいるように見えます?
Thinking you can tell someone's marital status by the way they look.
But you can.
名前は
Making someone read the baby's name from this distance instead of just telling them the baby's name or just making anyone read anything.
I don't think even Noriko knew Akiko's name and was searching for it herself. Besides, that katakana was big enough to see at that distance. You blind or something?
なんでそんななりしてるんですか。そんな不老人みたいなことをしてても自利品でしょ。
パンパンにでもなれって。
そんな顔されても。
Well, let's see, Koichi. You have tried to make Noriko feel like an idiot for not having a husband and choosing to take care of an abandoned baby, and told her she looks like a vagrant. I'd say you're lucky she's only insulted and not ripping off your dick with her free hand.
I feel like Jeremy doesn't realize this is 1940s Japan. What I mean by that is, even in 1940s America, there weren't women that reacted to men that way, as there were far less protections for domestic abuse. Hell, modern Japan is still having these issues. In any case, seeing a woman with a child back then, you'd most likely assume she was married and the child was hers. She is the anomaly, not Koichi.
やだやだ。面倒はごめんなよ。
Thing I said to the MCU after they said I had to watch their TV shows to keep up somehow makes its way into the script.
This is irresponsible. I get grifters like Tyrone Magnus and Geeks and Gamers saying this dumb shit, but I really expect better from you. No MCU TV show is required viewing to understand any of the movies. Every film that had a show that connected to it stood on its own and explained its characters within that film. None of those films' plots had anything to do with the TV show's plots either. I mean, think about it. The first time you watched Civil War, Black Panther came out of nowhere. We'd never seen him before, and he wasn't around during Age of Ultron or during the attack on New York. But that film told you everything you needed to know about that character. The same is true for the Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Deadpool and Wolverine. 3 films that had TV shows chronologically set before those films. What, are you going to tell me you didn't understand Deadpool and Wolverine because you didn't watch Loki? Do better.
がっかりしましたか。船がこんなんで。
Kenji is about to tell him that because there are magnetic mines that the boat has to be made of wood, but I don't think he was just disappointed that it was a boat made of wood. I think he was disappointed that it was a piece of shit boat made out of wood.
Jeremy cuts off Koichi's reaction to the explanation that specifically shows him answer with, hence the wood.
米軍と帝国海軍は日本の沿岸に合わせて約6万個の機雷を巻きました。
Having more history lessons about the U.S. and Imperial Navies laying out mines in your first 22 minutes than scenes with Godzilla.
Again, I know you're used to Godzilla movies that have no interest in characterizing its human cast, but this one is specifically giving you the reasoning for Koichi's second encounter with Godzilla. What I'm saying is they're giving you what you're asking for, they're just creating a realistic and believable scenario to give you what you're asking for. This is the good writing that the grifters say modern movies lack.
こいつは小僧、そっちは学者でいい。
その呼び方どうなんですかね、長さん。俺ももう小僧って年じゃん。
Thinking age has anything to do with having the kid as your nickname. Kid Cudi is 40 now, and Daniel Negreanu is still called Kid Poker at almost 50. What I'm saying is, kids.
I think the difference is consent. Kid Cudi came up with his stage name on his own. Being called a kid is infantilizing.
これがなかなか難しいんだ。
やらせてもらえますか。
Cocky old guy on the job gets showed up by the new guy on the job that he's recently been making fun of cliche.
Would be a sin if that was actually happening here. Luckily, you have me, as I speak Japanese. The translation you have on the screen says this gun is a bit tricky, but what he actually said was, これがなかなか難しいんだ, or this is quite difficult. Muzukashi means difficult, so he's not being cocky, simply saying hitting the mine is not easy. In the earlier scene where you were whining about kids, the three men reacted to Koichi's former occupation with curiosity and pride. This hints that these men are not fighters, so shooting a gun would be difficult for them, even Yoji here, who used to be a farmer. Since Koichi is a fighter pilot, handling a weapon like this comes naturally to him.
Finally, some more Godzilla action. There's no way this will just be a dream and... Damn it!
But doesn't it still count for the audience? I mean, you're not going to tell me this scene from The Matrix isn't cool simply because The Matrix isn't real. Besides, this is the film doing character work, where they're showing a man suffering from PTSD and why his encounter with Godzilla means something beyond frivolous CGI porn. It's this character work that makes his heroic triumph over Godzilla mean something.
Opening your eyes during a nuclear explosion.
I think that was his cloaca.
I believe the 3 in this case represents the 3rd month, not the number of minutes Godzilla has been in this movie so far. Enough with meaningful human drama and backstory that gives authentic depth to the human characters. Where's my monster go smash smash?
Americans.
This shows the destroyed boat as having the front of the ship above water, but when we see the actual photo, it appears that the rear of the ship, with some of the propeller visible, is the part on top. So this sin is either for a terrible diagram designer or a lazy continuity department.
Interesting choice of words there, CinemaSins. I mean, calling someone lazy and terrible when you just tried to tell the audience that diagram was depicting the photographed boat. You spliced these scenes together to make it look as if the diagram was depicting that boat, but what the movie was actually showing was a montage of damaged boats that had come into contact with Godzilla after that first boat was sunk stern first.
Someone suggested a giant shark caused the damage to this boat and was not immediately fired on the spot.
You realize this is a kaiju movie, right? You know, a universe where giant monsters absolutely exist. You're doing the thing where you criticize a character for not having the information that you do again. And granted, they don't know about Godzilla yet, but you're positioning this question as if a giant creature is ridiculous. In a Godzilla movie,
もしもこれがあの時のゴジラと同じ個体なら、さらにでかく、凶暴になっていると思われます。
And of course, everyone will go on assuming it's the same Godzilla because they know they are in a movie about a singular Godzilla.
You're manipulating this scene. Koichi has been suffering from PTSD due to his encounter with the monster. You cut out the part of the scene showing the deep-sea fish, which he was told earlier was a sign of Godzilla's imminent arrival and was subsequently proven correct when it attacked the island. Given that there is a ship right in front of them that was clearly destroyed by a giant creature, this is an inference that makes sense.
これアメリカ産の船だろ自分らでなんとかできないのかよ
こういうサジは自分のところで処理せよってね。
The US calling this the small stuff might be the most 1940s United States bullshit to ever bullshit a movie.
The doctor was the one that called this the small stuff, not Americans, and he said that in relation to the Americans having a bigger worry in the Soviets, as this was the start of the Cold War. Look, I like roasting my fellow countrymen like any healthy adult should, but this time it's not warranted.
それについては回収した機雷を使えとのことです。
So let's talk about Japan's plan. In order to fight Godzilla, they sent a tiny wooden boat out with a gun to explode mines in the hope that Godzilla will go after them, and then one of those mines might kill the giant creature that just used a battleship as a chew toy?
I really don't see the issue here. Why do you conflate the ability to, say, damage a boat with being able to survive explosives? Orcas have demonstrated the ability to attack and sink boats, and you could easily kill them with a hand grenade, let alone a naval mine. They have no reason to believe this won't work.
根詰めすぎですよ、四季さん。
He was looking through binoculars. How hard could Koichi possibly be pushing himself? Aren't they just in stay and wait mode currently?
You didn't show that there has been a time passage since they saw the fish. Koichi has been standing on alert this entire time, and this dialogue is what reveals that to the audience. Jesus, man, do you even know how to watch movies?
どうしました？
The movie will say that's the sound of fish surfacing, but unless there are large amounts of air surfacing with them, dead fish coming to the surface will not make a sound. Spoiler alert, there is no air coming to the surface with them.
I considered not sending this because it seemed too petty, but I couldn't let the idea that there's no sound from fish surfacing to go unopposed. That's just literally not true. Granted, the sound is not as dramatic as the film makes it seem, but no sound is. It's literally the Foley artist's job to make mundane sounds pop for an audience. Almost no sounds you hear in movies come from the set mics and are done by a Foley artist, and they exaggerate sound on purpose.
And you've already had this exact conversation a couple scenes ago and decided to stick to your orders and stay put. So what exactly has changed? Why is this argument?
This is because you're cutting out scenes. The doctor explains that a warship, the Takao, is on its way to this location and that their job is to stall for time, attracting Godzilla's attention and preventing him from making landfall in Tokyo. It's almost like watching the movie would have answered this question or something.
Godzilla rocks the come-from-below attack with the big boat, but the much lesser-known slowly tailed him like a dog swimming to fetch a stick strategy for the tiny wooden vessel.
This is an implication for which you have no evidence. In the montage of destroyed boats, they show an image of Godzilla that looks just like this, which implies that this is how he typically attacks boats. The American ship that was destroyed was hit from the side, which means the creature could have simply rammed into the boat using this exact method.
Holy shit, this whole scene is so goddamn badass.
Right? This is badass, but not as badass as that fucking laugh. Wait.
Deusilla Ex Machina.
But this isn't a Deus Ex Machina because, as I explained earlier, the film tells us the Takao is on its way to this location. That Koichi's boat is the decoy isn't just the point, it's the reason they're out here.
Godzilla's healing powers are instant and complete, except for the final part where they're all like, let's leave some visual discoloration here so the audience knows where we've been hit.
Why lie? In the first instance, he still had some discoloration on his face after the initial resurrection. The scene after is after using his atomic breath, which in this canon also hurts him and is more significant damage than the mine explosion.
And after all that, Godzilla leaves?
All that being him getting blasted by naval cannons multiple times and having to resort to using his nuke attack that leaves him damaged. Yeah, I'd slink away after all that too.
Mostly that I watch brilliant movies like this only to get distracted by this lamp and wonder why it's not the Studio Ghibli mascot, so... Skip! They all perished? What about the guy that was dragging around the bodies? What happened to him?
He's referencing the men in the photographs, Jeremy.
A child whose favorite thing is a radish.
Slow your roll. Japanese daikon is actually really, really good. Koreans even use this radish in kimchi, and it's like the best part.
They have tried both exploding mines and gunfire on Godzilla and have had zero success in even slowing him down. So what's the next course of action? More explosions. Yeah, it makes all the sense.
I think you keep forgetting this is 1940s Japan. What other technology do you think they have, Jeremy? Because I'm sure they could have used your expertise in 1945.
Godzilla will obviously cause all kinds of destruction on its path through the city, but it's convenient timing on one of its first bouts of destruction involving the exact train Noriko is on is convenient.
Why is that convenient, exactly? Why is it not convenient for the other hundreds of people on this train? Oh, you mean because the story involves her? But would there even be a story to tell if she wasn't involved?
This movie was made for about 15 mil. That's it. And while you think that might be a sin removal, the sin is that Hollywood would mostly rather make a $200 million trash fire than $10-20 million potential hits.
Yes, I agree. But again, that's not a sin for this movie. You are giving -1 a sin because movie studios in a whole different country don't know how to allocate funds properly.
We've stopped running to look back and watch at the exact same time because I guess maybe we're totally safe now or something.
Do I have to post videos of people near the World Trade Center on 9/11? Because I'll do that shit.
Puberty.
Sinning this scene. That's worth these many sins.
Damn it, movies. It takes the same amount of time to tackle someone into a space as it does to push them there, and you know it.
Sinning this scene. That's worth these many sins.
I'm not 100% sure this would be the Japanese version for the no sin, but I am 100% sure I'm sinning it like it is anyway.
Sinning this scene. That's worth these many sins.
実は秘密裏にゴジラを駆除する作戦が進行中です。
And I thought I would bring this information to you on the occasion of your cohabitants passing and the subsequent existential crisis over everyone you're close to dying and your own ineffectual purpose, because we got to keep this movie moving, buddy.
You would think this would be the best time to convince him, where he's feeling the angriest at the creature, so he'd have the motivation to join up.
つまり我々は民間の力だけであの怪物に立ち向かわなければなりません。
Could just be me, but if all the contemporary weapons have had no effect on Godzilla, I'm not sure how throwing private citizens at it is going to make much of a difference.
Look, I get you don't speak Japanese, so you think you can cut off the movie at spots where you think they've said what they're trying to say based on the subtitles. But he's not saying we're recruiting private citizens to mass attack the monster. He's saying they don't have the support of the Japanese government, so if they do click up, it'll be as private citizens and not an official military outfit.
このゴジラを模した木片には重りをつけてギリギリ浮いている状態に調整してあります。この状態でチューブからフロンガスを送り込み、木片を泡で包むとどうなるでしょう。
Meanwhile, on Kenji the Science He.
I don't know what annoys me more, the lame joke or the anti-intellectualism on display here.
四季さん、最後まで聞いてくれ。
I know there's like 100 people in the room and the plan is ultimately about steering two big ships around Godzilla, but I need you specifically to stay because I think you're the protagonist or something.
Pretty sure these guys are good friends at this point, and they've sailed together for years, so he knows what Koichi is capable of. I mean, he even went to his not wife's fake funeral.
これ絶対死ぬってわけじゃないですよね。
もちろんです。
じゃあ戦時中よりずいぶんマシだ。
This fucking guy and his jokes.
Instantly boosted morale in the room. What's the problem?
俺たちじゃなきゃ船は動かせねえわけだし。
I'm guessing anyone else who has the appropriate training, but sure, carry on with your rousing speech leads to group fervor to accomplish a task cliche. I totally get it.
Actually, you don't get it at all. They just explained in this very scene that the Japanese government will not help because it would risk raising tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. Remember, after World War II, the United States ordered the government of Japan to decommission all of its war vehicles as a part of the Potsdam Declaration. Don't you know your history?
航空機で誘導なんて命がけの仕事。
As opposed to the boats that are going to lasso the giant lizard with Freon bubble machines?
That's a necessary part of Kenji's plan. Koichi flying a plane was not.
Kenji said earlier in regards to Godzilla's return.
10日以内に再上陸があり得ると思っています。
So how does Koichi have time to write all these letters trying to locate the correct Tachibana instead of just finding a different fucking mechanic?
The movie explicitly addresses that very criticism with Koichi insisting that Tachibana will receive his message when pressed by Kenji. You are agreeing with the movie is what I'm saying.
そう言いふらせばあなたが怒ってここを訪ねてくれると思ったんだよ。
Forgetting about the flight option of fight or flight.
Isn't this him taking the fight option? Enduring your opponent's attack is a form of fighting. Just ask Muhammad Ali.
これが幻の極地戦闘機神殿ですか。
I would be excited about this if I knew what any of it meant and hadn't just heard these words put together for the first time 1 hour and 24 minutes into the movie.
I'll never understand why you just lie. They use those exact words and explain the plane the first time we see it in the movie, which was only 6 movie minutes before this scene.
大戦末期に開発されていた極地戦闘機神殿です。 B を落とす一撃離脱に特化した設計で計画最大速度は400ノット以上、戦備翼を備え30ミリ砲4門という破格の重武装を誇り、数々の新機軸を盛り込んだ革新的な機体です。
みんな生きて帰ってきたかった。それが願い叶わず虫けらみたいに殺されたんだ。
Actually, bugs have an exoskeleton, so technically they got squashed more like water balloons filled with strawberry jam and some twigs.
Jeremy, I think his point was that, like we squash bugs, Godzilla squashed people.
Movie spends so much time drooling over this plane takeoff that now it has to officially be included in the Star Wars canon.
Anyone? Did anyone laugh at that?
Godzilla has all this room to walk around this farmhouse complex, but specifically chooses the path right through it. What a dick.
That house was a dick for being in his way.
Tricking Godzilla into going back out to sea the same way you trick a child into eating its broccoli.
I thought you didn't have to trick kids to eat broccoli because it's delicious. Remember that?
お伝えした通り、一度熱線を離すと再生には時間がかかるんです。
Continuing to say things you think to be true as if they are true. You know what happens when you assume, Kenji? That's right, you let Godzilla make ash out of you and me.
But he's right. He witnessed Godzilla using his atomic breath at least twice, and both times showed him suffering damage that needed time to heal. Hell, you complained about Godzilla leaving after he destroyed the Destroyer. Destroyer.
Godzilla just stands here waiting to be Freon instead of swimming after either of these boats.
What CinemaSins isn't showing you is that Godzilla is mainly concerned with the airplane that keeps buzzing by him and shooting at him.
And they're able to time this trap perfectly with the next time Godzilla revs up its heat ray, even though they've only witnessed the heat ray one previous time and would have no way to measure how quickly the next one would be ready to go.
Wrong. At this point, he's fired it off 3 times. Once against the Takao, once against Ginza's red light district, rest in peace, and once right in front of them like 2 movie minutes ago.
What the hell is Godzilla doing while they set all this nonsense tugboats we didn't know were coming but have supplies to use in some sort of way up?
Currently being crushed by the water pressure?
Blowing a possible title for the sequel.
That didn't stop Avengers Endgame.
Timing this approach perfectly despite having no communication with the boats and no way of knowing how and when Godzilla would surface.
I don't know if you noticed this, but Koichi's in a plane? You know, meaning he'd have the best vantage point and that this was always his plan, being a kamikaze pilot.
Also, hitting the G-spot on your first try.
Skill issue.
Powerful stuff for sure, but how exactly did this ejector seat work? If you slow down the approach after we get the obligatory photo of the lost love and then a flashback to her bringing in the sheets, he brings his goggles down, pulls the lever, and ejects in 7 frames of video, or about 1/3 of a second. Considering most ejection seats take 2 to 4 seconds to operate, I need to know the technology you used to have this happen so quickly.
Interesting question, but it's nullified by the fact that in those few frames you don't see the top of the cockpit fly off, meaning those few seconds you're referring to likely happened right before impact.
Just going to go ahead and send the fact that they will eventually bring Godzilla back from this death in a future film. This will be harder to explain than the end of Jason Takes Manhattan, but also I'm all for Godzilla Goes to Hell if that's the route we choose next.
Here's my prediction based on me paying attention to everything we've seen. Since he regenerates, he's coming back for the next film. But since he's regenerating from a piece of this Godzilla, he's going to be resurrected as a different Godzilla, the anti-hero we all know and love. And then a bigger threat will attack Tokyo and he'll be everyone's favorite lizard again. And hopefully the Japanese do a real King Kong vs. Godzilla movie and have Kong win again like they did the first time because the Americans f***ed it up, just like they do every adaptation of Japanese media. Looking at you, Death Note.
It's Godzilla! It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not. Still, we should run like it is Godzilla! Though it isn't.